Belarusian land. Forests and quagmires. Rough terrains. The troops of the Belarusian front had to overcome many natural barriers here when they were advancing towards Gomel. The Germans, destroyed by our forces on the Desna, were moving behind the rivers Soch and Dnieper. Using the surroundings, the enemy built intermediate defenses to block our advancing forces, made tree barriers with barbed wire, and mined approaches to them. Our forces, advancing from the east, got to the river Soch north of Gomel. The units advancing from the southeast got to the Soch and the Dnieper to the south of the town. The enemy found themselves in a semicircle with a radius of no more than 15 to 20 kilometers. The battle started on this little bridgehead called Gomel's foreground. The commander of the Belarusian front, Army General Rokossovsky, and members of the Front Military Council. German spotters were found over there at the abandoned mill. The enemy's lines of defense have been destroyed and broken through. Tanks and infantry are penetrating the German defenses. Giving the enemy no break and continuing to push them to the west, our units took the town of Dobrush, which was the Germans' defense post near Gomel. The partisans entered the liberated town with the Red Army. It was them, brave avengers from the Budyeni squad, Soviet people who refused to give in to the enemy, who turn a quiet Dobrush into an arena of ruthless fighting with the invaders. The struggle against the German invaders didn't stop for a single day. Here are some signs of their great work. Derailed German wagons on the Dobrush-Linka Hall. A destroyed bridge. The house of the German Burgermeister, the supervisor of Dobrush, was blown up with grenades. The partisan's heart and soul was a girl nicknamed Katya, who was impossible to capture. The German commandants offered 3,000 marks, 5 poods of salt, and an allotment of 25 hectares for her head. Here she is, the fire of the partisans, a menace to the Germans. Katya, a Soviet girl, a loyal daughter of the Belarusian people. Her name is Varia Verich. During the dark days of the German occupation, she never stopped loving her country and had every faith in victory. And these are Katya's helpmates, a group of partisans. Sergei Alfeyev derailed 21 German wagons. Alexei Bashmakov helped to blow up 24 wagons. Vasily Bondaryenko, a brave saboteur who broke through to occupied Gomel under the Gestapo's very nose and knocked out a power station. Mikhail Nikitin is the leader of the group of saboteurs. He recently blew up the German ammunition depot. Vasily Mikhailovich Moskalyenko is a local forester. He and his daughter Eva and wife Praskovia Nikolaevna worked hard to help the partisans. They all contributed to the liberation of Byelorussia. After taking Dobrush, our forces got total control of Gomel's foreground and took Novobelitsa, a suburb of Gomel on the eastern bank of the river Soj. It is from here, from Novobelitsa, that the soldiers saw Gomel. Here it is, the second capital of Byelorussia, a Soviet city under German occupation from the autumn of 1941. The German commanders started preparing Gomel for a long defense operation in early summer. The advancing forces had waterways ahead of them. The river Soj, and further to the south and west, the Dnieper. The supreme commanders of the Red Army set the following mission for the Belarusian front forces: to force the crossing of the Soj to the north and south of Gomel, and at the same time, having crossed the Dnieper near the town of Loev, to start a flanking attack on the enemy's forces near Gomel. On an autumn morning, the sappers were working on the banks of the river Soj. They were detecting and clearing the mines laid by the Germans on the approaches to the river. The crossing was sudden for the enemy. It started at different sections at the same time. All measures were taken not to let the Germans gather themselves. Tireless wartime workers. The sappers are real heroes, working at the crossings day and night, in any weather, without any breaks, up to their waists in cold water. Under the enemy's fire, unit by unit, squadron by squadron, they were making their way to the right bank of the river. The Dnieper. Covered by artillery, the first soldiers started crossing. Having reached the western bank, soldiers consolidated their positions. The front artillery commander, General Colonel Katsakov, Lieutenant General Patov. The attack is to start soon. Open fire. In ruthless battles, our forces were going further past the Dnieper bridgehead, continuing to attack the enemy in the rear. Destroying German defenses from the rear, Red Army troops were advancing towards the town of Rechitsa to the west of Gomel, making it possible to entrap the enemy. Tanks and infantry continued to move forwards. Their efforts were joined by our cavalry striking at the enemy. Going round the enemy's defense lines, our units were approaching Rechitsa fast. After severe fighting on the night of the 18th of November, troops of the Belarusian front took Rechitsa. Having lost Rechitsa, the enemy lost a big communications point and an important defense point on the right bank of the middle reaches of the Dnieper. Soon afterwards, our forces started an offensive to the north of Gomel, in the area of Propoysk. At the same time, the troops who had taken Rechitsa continued their offensive. As a result, the enemy forces around Gomel found themselves in a pocket. Scared stiff of being trapped, the Germans quickly started to retreat from Gomel. Gomel. The cameraman managed to film this picture of Gomel from Novobelitsa. You can see explosions. It's the retreating Germans blowing up Gomel's best buildings, industrial plants, and historical monuments of Belarusian culture. Following in the enemy's footsteps, the soldiers managed to break into the city line. They are combing the outskirts, destroying the remaining invaders. On the 26th of November, following a brave bypass maneuver, troops of the Belarusian front took Gomel. For the first time, after the last 2.5 years of German captivity, the residents saw their people, soldiers of the Red Army. Not many Gomel residents lived to that day to experience the joy of this meeting. At that time, the central streets mined by the Germans were empty. Only the mine-clearing team were doing their usual dangerous job, clearing mines from houses, streets, and pavements. A large mine was found and deactivated in the basement of the specialist's house. Here is its mechanism. It was set to go off after 14 days. The German invaders were running Gomel for 27 long and gloomy months. They did much damage to the city. This is what the invaders did to the flourishing Gomel. The factories and plants where thousands of workers used to work were blown up and burnt down. The famous historic museum is destroyed. It was the pride of the city, a former residence of Prince Paskevich. The Germans desecrated the palace park with hundreds of graves of their soldiers and officers. While retreating, the fascist barbarians burnt down the city library. This used to be a German prison. Before leaving the city, Gestapo monsters blew it up with Soviet prisoners still inside. Many blocks were forbidden zones. Those who entered them were shot. Gomel's Liberation Day was the day of its rebirth. Life is coming back to the city. Liberators. The motherland tells them to go west next, where our people are still fighting for Soviet Byelorussia. The heroes are leaving the city, covered in glory.